Oh, do be seated. So here we go. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, Chief Justice Rosen, and the entire Kansas Supreme Court, members of my cabinet, leaders of the Kansas tribes, all the constitutional officers and legislators assembled, it is my honor to speak to you tonight. Before I begin, I would like to recognize a special guest with us this evening. I believe many in this chamber know him, as he has been a tireless advocate for deeper economic and cultural, cultural ties between Kansas and Ireland, the land of my ancestors. Senator Mark Daley, would you please stand to be recognized? You know, and as they say in the old country, Mark, Cade Mila Balcha, 100,000 welcomes. Now, this is my first time standing before all of you since we announced some very exciting, historic, actually game-changing news for our state. Our beloved chiefs are coming home to Kansas. Their world-class stadium, which opens 5 years from now, will make Kansas a sports and entertainment mecca. We'll compete to host Super Bowls, Final Fours, concerts, and so much more. Thousands of new jobs and billions in new economic activity. You know, and as I said on the day of the announcement, we're reminding the nation that we are not a flyover state. We are a touchdown state. You know, and we brought the chiefs to our state without a tax increase on Kansans and without pulling a dollar from other priorities in the budget. This is not only a massive win for Kansas, it is a win for the entire region. We were able to ensure that our kids, our grandkids, can carry on the tradition of roaring for the Chiefs just down the road. I'm proud to welcome the local leaders who were instrumental in making this happen. KCK Mayor and CEO of the United Government of Wyandotte County, Crystal Watson, and Mayor of the City of Olathe, John Bacon. Please stand to be recognized. And Mark Donovan is also in the gallery, for those of you who don't know. Mark is the president of the Kansas City Chiefs and deserves much credit for getting this deal done. It is an honor to have you here tonight, and please give our regards to Clark and the entire Hunt family. Mark Donovan. You know, ultimately, we were able to accomplish this amazing feat for two reasons. First, we made Kansas a place the Chiefs want to call home, with a strong economy, a strong workforce, strong communities, and of course, an extraordinary fan base. And second, because a bipartisan team of leaders in this chamber, along with the local officials we just recognized, and many members of my administration worked together to make this happen. Orchestrating these efforts was our own Eco-Devo wonder boy, the Lieutenant Governor of Kansas, David Tolan. David, please stand up and take a bow. You know, to land the Chiefs, we put all politics aside. We all put personal differences aside, and we didn't care who got credit. We just did what was best for Kansas and for our shared future. That's how you do big things. That's the way it's supposed to be. You know, as you know, this is my final State of the State address. Now, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, I put that line in because I thought it was going to be the only standing ovation I ever get from you. Anyway, as I reflect on my 2 terms as governor, I think about the 3 major challenges we faced. First, we needed to stop the bleeding, because when I took office, Kansas was in a world of hurt. Our budget was pieced together with gimmicks and funny money. Our schools were underfunded, and many had to resort to 4-day school weeks. Our roads and bridges were crumbling and unsafe. These problems had to be fixed. Second, we needed to improve the quality of life for all Kansans. We did that by cutting taxes, by creating thousands of good-paying jobs, and making our public schools not just functional, but exceptional. And third, we needed to change people's perceptions of Kansas and become a place where young people are eager to put down roots, where businesses see opportunity, where tourists flock to visit, and a place where Kansans are proud to call home. Now, I know there's more to do, but after 7 years, I also know that the state of our state has never been stronger. And I also know that the state of our future has never been brighter. Now, you all know me. I am an eternal optimist, but I'm also solidly pragmatic. So let me state the obvious. We live in extraordinarily challenging times. And I don't just mean our politics. If you think about the last decade in America, the speed of change we've endured is staggering. We now live our lives attached to devices. It's how we do business. It's how we keep up with the news. It's how we talk to our coworkers and friends, even our own grandchildren. And in the midst of it all, we also survived a global pandemic, only to return to a world changing even faster with remote work, AI bots, and cars that drive themselves. Many of us wish we could go back to simpler times, but we know we can't. We live in an era defined by disruption, an era that requires more from our leaders than ever before. Yet right when Americans needed leaders they could look to for strength, for resolve, character, and a clear vision, they got the exact opposite at the national level from both parties. When it became acceptable for nations' leaders to treat one another in the most uncivilized ways imaginable, language and behavior we'd never tolerate from our own children. And instead of using this new technology to reach people with messages of unity and hope, these devices have been turned into weapons for elected leaders to ignite chaos and anger and even violence. Instead of representing their communities, elected officials turned into foot soldiers for their political parties, firing off insults and vitriol to score likes or follows or wins for their team, instead of doing what's right for their constituents. It's as if they checked their free will at the door and just did as they were told, treating their own colleagues in such angry and dehumanizing ways just because they're in the other party. And the most frightening part, it's now become the new normal. All accepted part of political discourse. Well, I reject it. We must all reject it. You know, when I look at the successes we've had these last 7 years, here's what they all have in common. They required elected officials from different parties, with different ideologies, from different parts of the state, to come together, meet in the middle, find common ground to do what's best for Kansas. Now, there's a word for that. It's called civility. It's conducting ourselves with a sense of decency. It's disagreeing on issues, but doing so respectfully. It's demonstrating the humility to know you're not always right. Acknowledging that folks in the other party are also good Kansans, and that they might have good ideas too. It's being open to compromise, to building consensus. And it's always being guided by the principle that if you simply treat people the way you want to be treated, anything is possible. You know, since the beginning of my administration, by using this approach, we've been able to enact into law 587 bipartisan bills. That's 587 times coming together across the aisle in today's politics. That's something we should all be proud of. And just look at what we've accomplished by doing that. For 7 straight years, we fully funded our public schools. And we're seeing the benefits of that investment. Graduation rates are now the highest they have ever been. We established the blueprint for literacy to make sure all Kansas children are reading at or above grade level. And while the national discussion has only just recently turned to affordability, here in Kansas, we knew it was a top priority long before it became a political buzzword, just by talking to Kansans. In response, to help Kansans deal with rising costs, we cut over $1 billion per year in taxes. We totally eliminated the sales tax on food, saving Kansas families $500 a year. That's huge, and we got it done together. We cut taxes for seniors living on fixed incomes by completely eliminating the state income tax on Social Security. We cut taxes for parents to make childcare more affordable. We cut taxes for farmers to lower input costs. All of this is why, last year, CNBC named Kansas second in the country for cost of living. There are two reasons we've been able to return so much money to taxpayers. First, we managed the budget responsibly, turning the deficits we inherited into surpluses. Secondly, because we've grown our economy, increasing our annual revenues. That's been driven by a sustained, historic stretch of economic wins. I'm talking about Urban Outfitters in Wyandotte County, Amber Wave in Phillips County, Bartlett Grain in Montgomery County, Hillmar Cheese in Ford County, Boeing in Sedgwick County, Schwann's in Saline County, and then, of course, Panasonic and the Kansas City Chiefs. In total, new businesses have invested over $30 billion in Kansas. That's $30 billion. And created over 80,000 new, good-paying jobs. These are careers that Kansans can build their lives around, and it happened because we worked together. And that's not all. We also created the Office of Early Childhood. We blended 20 programs into one, so parents, providers, and businesses will have a single point of contact for everything they need to support our youngest Kansans. We have developed partnerships with the private sector to exponentially expand access to quality early childhood experiences all across Kansas. Right here in Topeka, the state of Kansas and Blue Cross Blue Shield will soon cut the ribbon on a 160-slot child care facility just blocks away from the Capitol. The Office of Early Childhood was a reform most of us agreed we needed. But we had different ideas how to get there. So we talked about it. We hammered out our differences, we compromised, and we got it done. So thank you, Chase. Because we worked together, we also closed the Bank of KDOT once and for all. And we've gone back to investing in our infrastructure the right way, the way we used to, restoring Kansans' rightful pride in their highway system. Together, we opened the Office of Rural Prosperity to put a focus on the unique needs of our rural areas. We've invested millions in high-speed internet, connecting over 117,000 homes and businesses to this economic lifeline. And together, we've provided record funding for law enforcement, and they have spent the money well. Crime in Kansas is now at a 20-year low. You know, everything I just talked about, we did it all while making sure our budgets were balanced every year. We did it without a tax increase. We paid down our debt. Our credit rating is strong. Our rainy day fund stands at $2 billion. Together, we have returned fiscal sanity to Topeka. You know, ultimately, we were able to get our state back on track because we showed that civility can still exist in our politics, that you can get a whole lot done when you work with others. But we cannot take it for granted. There are too many forces trying to push us into our partisan corners and make the other party the enemy. And sadly, we have seen some examples of where the ways of Washington have crept in to our conduct here in Kansas, where the level of discourse in this building went places I know many of you were not proud of or comfortable with. We must have the courage to treat each other with respect, regardless of the intensity of debate and discourse. We must have the courage to put what's right ahead of what's politically expedient. We must have the courage to compromise ahead of party purity. This moment in our politics requires it. And make no mistake, it's what the people of Kansas want. I stand before you as evidence of that. I did not get elected governor twice by screaming the loudest or bullying other people to get my way. Quite the opposite. I'm here because Kansans were looking for someone who would turn the volume down, do more listening than yelling, and bring people together to compromise and govern from the middle. Kansans are the most civil, decent people on earth. They embody the spirit of neighbor helping neighbor, and they expect that from us too. So I say to everyone here, do not let the loudest voices on either extreme drown out the voices of the vast majority of Kansans who want to see us work together. It's been the right approach. It's been an effective approach. And it's what we need to do this session to make it our strongest ever. When it comes to this session, it won't surprise you that my priorities always start with our public schools. Let's step back a moment and acknowledge this remarkable comeback. Just 10 years ago, in the aftermath of the disastrous tax experience, we had many school districts in Kansas forced into 4-day school weeks. Then, just as we finally restored full funding, COVID hit. And educators and parents had to adjust to remote learning, which we all know was horrible for everyone, especially the students. But our communities rallied. Teachers went into overdrive. Parents put in the extra time at home. Kansans take so much pride in their public schools, and together we doubled down on our commitment to them, not only fully funding our schools, but record funding for our schools. We all did our part, but it's educators who are the real heroes here. I'd like to speak about a special group of them for just a moment. Joining us tonight are a group of educators from Topeka Public Schools. They have the distinction, or perhaps at the time, the burden of teaching my own daughters, Kathleen and Molly, well over 20 years ago. Each of them made a lasting impression on both me and my daughters. Like so many of our dedicated teachers, the work they did with their students extends far beyond the classroom walls. They build relationships, they mentor, they guide. In every sense of the word, they educate. They're here tonight representing so many Kansas teachers who go above and beyond for our children and seldom get the recognition or the gratitude they deserve. So please stand as I call your name. Marty Bass, Kathleen and Molly's kindergarten teacher at Potwin Elementary. Diane Kimsey, Kathleen's 4th grade teacher at Potwin Elementary. Kirsten Sigler, Kathleen and Molly's English teacher at Topeka High. Anton Ahrens, Molly's chemistry teacher at Topeka High. And Harry Peterson, Kathleen's gifted facilitator at Topeka High. They're joined by Dr. Tiffany Anderson, Superintendent of Topeka Public Schools, who has transformed vocational and educational opportunities for students in Topeka, most notably by creating the Topeka Center for Advanced Learning and Careers. Please give these educators and educators all across Kansas a huge round of grateful applause. It speaks volumes that so many of us can think back decades and remember the teachers who touched our lives or our children's lives. I believe there's even more we must do to support them. At the state level, we have. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about our federal partners. Once again, the federal government has dropped the ball on funding for special education. When you think about what parents take on when they have a child with a disability, you realize just how unconscionable that is. Now, Kansas has already stepped up and added over $120 million for special education. We'll keep calling on Washington to cover its fair share, but until it does, my budget will continue to increase this investment. We will never turn our backs on these children or their families. We also know that tens of thousands of families in Kansas qualify for reduced price lunches, especially in some of our most rural areas. And we also know, with grocery costs being what they are right now, that for many of these families, even that reduced cost is untenable. So I am, again, including funding in my budget to allow students currently on reduced price meals to move entirely to free meals to ease that stress on their families. Let's make it clear. We need to make it clear, no child in Kansas should ever have to worry about having enough to eat. Life is hard enough for our children these days, and we need to face this fact. Technology is making it much, much harder. Smartphones and social media have exposed our children to a world they are not ready for, and to social pressures they don't need or deserve. It's creating a mental health crisis and a learning crisis. Talk to the parents. These are the first concerns they raise 9 times out of 10. The research on this is very clear. Anxiety in our kids is up. Depression is up. Tragically, suicide is up. Cell phones are making it much harder for our children to learn and for our teachers to teach. We need to step up and do something about this. This session, we must pass the bipartisan proposal to ban cell phone use during the school day. I want to thank Majority Leader Chase Blasey and Minority Leader Dinah Sykes for their work on this critical issue. Get that bill to my desk, and I will sign it into law. We also know that mental health challenges are not limited to our children. It's a reality so many Kansans and their families face. When I first took office, our mental health system in Kansas was seriously lacking. Our continuum of care, prevention, treatment, inpatient, post-discharge services, all had huge gaps, dangerous gaps. We had no crisis hotline. We had long wait lists for treatment. We had a severe shortage of mental health professionals and services, particularly in our rural areas. Fortunately, there were legislators on both sides of the aisle and leaders in our state agencies who recognized the danger and focused like a laser on solutions. Now, we have the Office of Early Childhood, which will ensure our youngest children get the start in life they need to become resilient, productive adults. We were one of the first states in the country to implement the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic model that will focus on the whole person approach. We were one of the first states to operationalize the 988 crisis hotline, a vital link to life-saving services. We initiated and substantially increased mental health services in our schools, ensuring that our children have access to the help they need when they need it. Soon, we will open a new state psychiatric hospital in south central Kansas that will mitigate the wait lists at Osawatomie and Larned. And now, when judges must incarcerate someone whose primary issue is substance abuse, they can be sent to the newly renovated East Campus at Lansing Correctional Facility, where they will live in a therapeutic environment designed to treat their addiction and prepare them for successful reentry to their communities. We have done a lot. We have filled many gaps, but unfortunately, the needs require that we do even more. We need more treatment beds, we need more professionals, we need more crisis response, and my budget does that. Just join me in making mental health a real priority this session. You know, when we announced the agreement with the chiefs to move to Kansas, we showed Kansans and the rest of America that we are capable of coming together to do big things, and that we're able to think long-term. Now, we must do that again. We must do something that no legislature, no administration has ever been able to accomplish, and that's to properly, permanently address our water crisis. Last year, we took a critical step by establishing the Water Task Force, led by Representative Jim Minix and Senator Kenny Titus. Now I'm calling on the legislature to support that task force in its work, to lay out a comprehensive long-term strategy and identify a dedicated funding source, much like we have successfully done for our highways. I know it won't be easy. I know it is a very sensitive political issue, but the future of our entire state is dependent upon the actions we take today. It will require looking beyond the next election and looking instead to the next generation. And someday, when your great-grandchildren are looking at that family album, let it be said that when you were in the legislature and you had the chance, you did the right thing. You know, water, yeah. You know, water isn't a partisan issue. It's a Kansas issue, and it's a time-sensitive issue. Let's treat it that way and make it a top priority this session. You know, when you think back on this journey we've been on together, it's quite remarkable the turnaround Kansas has made. 10 years ago, Kansas was generating national headlines like, "What's the matter with Kansas? It can't do math?" Late-night shows mocked Kansas, calling us a laboratory of fiscal disaster. But now, instead of being a national punchline, we're winning national awards for economic development, for modernizing our unemployment system, for our first-class roads. And perhaps the greatest recognition of all, the Kansas City Chiefs, who've won 3 Super Bowls while I've been governor, something no other current governor can claim. They will literally move Kansas to the big leagues. Big things are happening in our small state, and there are more big things to come if we work together. In my first State of the State in 2019, I encouraged us to consider a fairly profound question. What is Kansas worth? What sacrifices are we willing to make for the state we love? Were we willing to do the hard work, putting what's right for Kansas above what's right for our political parties? Tonight, I highlighted all of the successes we've had by doing just that. But that spirit of civility must endure in the months ahead and the years ahead, as the challenges we face will only get bigger. We must live up to our state motto, ad astra per aspera, and show America that civility in our politics is still possible, that civility is what brings us together. and that civility is a winning formula for governing and for life itself. Thank you and good night.
Hello, friends. I'm Dan Hawkins, Speaker of the Kansas House of Representatives. Serving you in the People's House in Topeka is a privilege, and what an added honor it is to speak with you and others all across the great state tonight. 2 years ago, I had the honor to deliver this address. At that time, I told you about the Republican Better Way plan, our commitment to put Kansas families first by protecting our communities, honoring the value of work, and making Kansas the greatest state in the nation to live, work, raise a family, and retire. 2 years later, I want to share with you our success stories and highlight where we go from here. The issue I hear the most about these days is cost of living. Quite frankly, the Biden administration sent inflation skyrocketing, making it nearly impossible for families to make ends meet. Republicans in your state House and Senate have been taking decisive action because we share your concerns about taxes, inflation, and the cost of living. As part-time citizen legislators who live and work in places like Dodge City, Wichita, Hayes, and Overland Park, we feel the same real-world pressures you do. So what can be done about it at the state level? Let's start with taxes. In the last 2 years, as a Republican majority, we eliminated the state portion of your property tax for 2026. We eliminated the state sales tax on groceries. We lowered state income tax rates. We repealed the state income tax on Social Security, and we increased child tax credits. That's real tax relief to lower your cost of living. And believe me, we're not done looking for ways to further address property tax issues as government spending at the local level is too often rising even faster than inflation. Of course, the other part of the story is that taxes are directly related to spending. So we've also been wrangling the state budget to bring it under control. 3 things are making a big difference on our budget. First, while Governor Kelly continues to do everything in her power to cover up the waste, fraud, and abuse in government welfare programs, the Republican majority is successfully pushing for greater transparency and efficiency in order to make better use of every tax dollar. This means really looking under the hood when it comes to government programs and doing things like removing folks who are deceased or illegal immigrant enrollees from welfare programs so the cost of health insurance doesn't keep rising. Every fraudulent dollar spent by the government is a dollar out of your pocket. It must end. Second, we're investing wisely in core state government functions like schools, roads, the state water program, and public safety so they are stronger and better. In my first term as Speaker, I established the House Water Committee. That committee has already established long-term funding for the state water program, prioritized the revitalization of outdated infrastructure, and are implementing a strategy to ensure Kansas water resources are sustainable long into the future. When we eliminate absurd and unnecessary spending, we put the money where it counts. We can focus on the true budget priorities and do those things better, avoiding unnecessary costs down the road. Finally, we're resisting massive new government spending programs like those repeatedly proposed by Governor Kelly. Enough is enough. You will never get government spending under control if you keep adding new programs. The bottom line is we are focusing on the core services of government and doing those things right. We're putting people first, and it's working. This past year alone, we reduced state spending by over $200 million. Now let's talk about our kids for a moment and how we can secure a bright future for them in our state. Schools are our #1 budget priority, with billions invested each year. But money is only one piece of the education equation. To make the best use of our K-12 spending and to help kids succeed, it's time to address the issue of electronics in the classroom. In 2023, Florida passed the classroom cell phone ban. Since taking this step, both student test scores and school attendance have improved. We have to be honest. We all know cell phones are a distraction. Kids spending all day looking at their phones and addictive social media is not a recipe for success. We need better academic results for our kids, and getting cell phones out of the classroom is one meaningful approach we should adopt now in Kansas. Another issue the legislature is focused on is healthcare. It's beyond frustrating to see enormous federal and state government funding pumped into the system, and yet costs keep skyrocketing, and middle-class families are forced to keep paying more. In Kansas, we're taking a strategic approach that focuses on actual solutions to root problems. Things like improving reimbursements for hospitals, enhancing telemedicine options, and creating meaningful oversight of the Rural Health Transformation Fund, which, if used wisely, has the ability to right-size health care for rural Kansas communities. Payouts to big hospital systems and programs based on buzzwords instead of actual care, as some have suggested, are not going to cut it. Next up, it's critically important to improve transparency in hospital pricing so people can be empowered to hold the healthcare industry accountable. And we must find bipartisan solutions to end the abuse of federal programs intended to lower prescription costs in places like rural Kansas, but instead end up lining the pockets of big corporate health systems. Finally, as part of our People First agenda, we'll be concentrating on housing, insurance, and utility costs in the coming months. We must eliminate red tape and overregulation so single-family homes can be built more quickly and affordably. We will work on tort reform efforts to bring down insurance costs, and we will rein in the big rate increases proposed by the electric monopolies. A balanced approach is essential to address cost of living concerns. This will be my final year as Speaker of the House. It's a position I never imagined I would hold. I truly love the state of Kansas and know it is the best state in the union. When I look out on our great state, I see the challenges we face. But we've faced challenges before. This was the location of Bleeding Kansas that sparked the war that divided our nation. We faced grasshopper plagues, ice storms, prairie fires, tornadoes, and the Dust Bowl. But Kansas remains undefeated. We dust ourselves off and we confront our problems head on, and we carry on. To the stars through difficulties isn't just a motto, it's who we are. Republicans in the State House remain committed to having your back and putting the policies in place that help us excel as a state. But it's not the elected officials who make Kansas great. It's the farmers, engineers, aviation innovators, teachers, soldiers, skilled laborers, techies, small business owners, and cowboys. It's the people, and the people of Kansas will excel as long as the government stays out of their way. That is truly the better way. God bless you, your families, and God bless the free state of Kansas.